Hey everybody, Lawrence here with Dirty Basic Drink, coming at you with another one. Mushrooms. Now, this is the second in my series of different styles of mushrooms, funguses, all this, whatever you want to call it. But this is a more of a classical style, but in the way that I do it. But again, these are just a classical style mushroom, you know, the big wide cap that seems to show up. But once again, my style. But I kind of made a couple of them. just a few. As a matter of fact, they won't all fit onto this. But I just want to walk you guys through how I made them and how I got from some nasty chunks of foam to some relatively nice looking mushrooms. But before we get to it, I want to give a big thanks to my patrons: Dungeon Matron, Mia Geek, Sykes, Quarel. You guys' help is highly appreciated, and I can't thank you enough. So, all right, guys, let's get to it. Here I'm just cutting up some simple squares. They're roughly a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch thick, and I'm cutting various sizes, like 3 inch, 2 inch, 1.5 inch, just squares to start off with. Now I'm cutting these squares that I cut up into a roughly round shape. I want a semi-roughly round mushroom cap, so that's what I'm doing. Now that I've got them into all the different caps into the round shape, I want to start carving off chunks to give it that more classic mushroom cap look. Or, well, at least for what I'm doing, fantasy style. It's just a matter of slowly shaving off pieces and leaving a little bit of a bump in the center. Yeah, this will make a big mess, but it's always better to shave off small pieces. That way you won't cut too much off. And just, there you go. Now that I've got the tops of the caps roughed out, I want to start cutting away at the bottoms, or the underside of the caps, just to give it like that concave look. It's a bit of a pain in the butt, but I'm just using my X-Acto blade here to cut into like an angle and slowly shave away and then peel off pieces. And if I got to cut more off, I can cut more off. It's always best to cut off small chunks and then go and grab another one and start that process over. Again, cut smaller pieces off rather than large chunks. That way you won't cut too much off and ruin a piece. It's pretty simple. Cut in an angle and then pop it out using either the blade or, you know, another tool or your fingers. Well, going through my offcut bin here, I need to make a bunch of stems, so I'm grabbing out of the offcut bin, use the offcuts so I don't waste nicer looking foam. And I got what I need. Right now, I'm not even really measuring. I'm like kind of eyeballing it all to as far as length and width, and I'm just blocking out what the stems are going to look like. Again, this is just a really rough eyeball on it. It's like, how tall do I want this to be? How wide? Just the same as all the other stuff. This is just the basic block, which I'll cut down into semicircle or whatever shapes until I'm happy with how it looks. And as you can see, it's really not that hard. Kind of test fit, see if I got to make it smaller or whatnot. That's why cut, test fit, cut, test fit, cut, test fit till I'm semi-happy with how it looks. Now with some of these, I didn't want just a straight up single stem. I wanted to go a little more fantastical base and just make them look a lot different. So I just eyeballed and drew a pattern on to a chunk of the foam and then just started cutting out. I said, there's no real plan or thought out idea to how I'm doing this. I'm just, hey, yeah, that looks good. And I will cut it out until I'm happy with the general shape and form of it. Now that I've got all the different pieces roughed out, I want to smooth them out, and I'm just using a fine grit. Yeah, I honestly don't know what grit sandpaper this is. I have a small supply in my one drawer, and I just grabbed a couple chunks, and I think this is a finer grit sandpaper. Again, this is just smoothing it out to make it look more natural instead of those like hard chunks. And now that I've got the stem done, I want to start sanding on these caps. I said the end product is not smooth, but I want a smooth base to start off with. So again, it's just sanding it and making it a little more smooth and more natural and easier to work with for later steps. Of course, sanding off the edges there, sanding the top, and I'll even sand off the underside. A lot of these mushrooms aren't going to sit flat on the bases. So I'm just tracing the base around the different chunks of foam, and I want to have elevated bases like rock, maybe a rock, dirt pile, whatever you want to call it. So I'll just make sure that, for this particular one, make sure it'll fit on the base, because this one particular one's going to be large. And start trimming away till I'm actually happy with how it looks. And then once it actually fits, okay, now I can actually start forming it and shaping it, cutting off chunks. Now do I want it to lean to one edge? Here, the one I plan to put on there, I'll trace around it so I don't cut away too much. Then the stem won't fit on. But again, this is just a matter of chopping away chunks until I'm happy with how it looks. Maybe even a little ledge right there like I just put. Maybe I'll put another mushroom there on this particular one. Again, take small chunks away until you're happy with how it looks, and just keep going. Now here I want to give that ribbed or fin texture or whatever it is to the underside of the mushroom, the cap. So I'm using my brush here and just scoring some lines. I wasn't happy with how that looked too much, so I grabbed this sculpting tool, which is basically like a really thin nail, and just kind of drag a bunch of lines in it till I'm happy with how it looks. Now I've already glued the stems to the base, and now I'm just hot gluing the caps to the stems. Yes, it's black. I just had some black hot glue that I wanted to try out just to see what it looked like. But this is just hot glue. It just happens to be a black hot glue. But again, it's just a matter of a couple dabs of hot glue onto the top of the stems and then attach the caps and done. I wanted to add some of that, I think it's called shelf fungus, or basically the mushrooms that kind of like grow like shelving units on trees and different things, just to give it a little extra something. And I used the tips of pine cone, and they work great. I'll put a video out later on how to make them, but this is just a matter of slicing a piece in, dipping one of my pre-prepared pieces in some glue, and then just jamming it into the slice that I made. And they look good. And here I'm just doing something that I've done many times before for plants. I like to have some roots showing on top of the soil or rock or dirt or whatever. So I'm just using hot glue and then making some random trails that look like roots. Of course, now I'm using my homemade texture paste to put anywhere where there's where I would put soil or dirt, whatever you want to call it. I'm basically covering up some of the seams there from the mushroom stems to the base, anywhere where dirt needs to go, or at least I want it to go. Now, I made a bunch of mini mushrooms using tiny foam balls and toothpicks, and I want to start adding these to the bases. I didn't want it to be just the giant mushroom. That's why I added the shelf fungus, and now I'm adding all these tiny little mini mushrooms, just for some visual appeal on the bases. You'll find that, it's tiny little things that actually will improve the way terrain looks. And as long as it doesn't interfere with gameplay, add it if you can. And I'm using these little spherical stickers to place on top of the caps just to give the caps some bumps, because it'll look kind of cool. And don't worry about the stickers not being secured, because it's just stickers. Later steps will absolutely keep them in place. Now I want to add some texture to the top here, so I'm going to use the classic bathroom tissue and watered down PVA method. Now I have a square of bathroom tissue here that I'm trimming to actually fit the top of the cap. And I'm grabbing my watered down 50-50 mix of water and PVA glue here and lay the bathroom tissue down. And I'm going to start brushing on the watered down PVA. This will give the cap some wrinkles and kind of like knots and just nice texture. And this will also help secure those half-sphere stickers down in place, so they will never come up. This is just a matter of glue, 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 and you can already see all the wrinkles and texture that this is adding. Now I've already black Mod Podged this, all the foam areas. It's a boring step. I think we all know how to paint on black Mod Podge, but I'm going to start off with painting the underside of the caps with a medium brown. I think this is nutmeg brown that I'm using. I'm doing my standard, three-tone paint job, a dark, a medium, and a light, just to make it pop a little more. Now that I got the dark on, I'm doing a heavy overbrush here, just leaving only the darkest recesses of the underside here, just to make the texture that I did pop. Now that I've got the overbrush done, I want to do a quick dry brush on the underside, just to do a highlight. Even though this is a heavily shadowed area, I still want to do a quick highlight dry brush. I want to start painting the caps, the tops of the caps themselves. Yeah, I'm using multiple different colors, but they're all painted in the same style. A dark, a medium, and a light. But I want to make sure I get all the black covered up with this dark red. And just get 100% coverage on it. I'm not super worried about the little sticker things that I put on earlier, because they're going to be painted a different color. So if you want to avoid them. If not, then do your best to avoid them. But again, they're going to be painted a different color later. So it doesn't matter if you get paint on them or not. Now I want to use my mid-tone color for the red ones. And you can see I've already done the purple and the blue ones base coat, but this is the mid-tone for the red, and it's just a medium, just the overbrush and make all the textures and stuff pop and make it look good. Of course, now I'm using a makeup brush because I want to do a quick highlight dry brush with the light red. Not really a pink, but a light red. And as you can see, I've already done, I'm just showing you the red ones, but I'm doing the exact same process with the purple and the blue ones, as you can see in the background there. It's just a quick highlight dry brush just to make all that texture pop. Now it's time to start working on the stems. I'm actually using the same colors I did for the underside of the caps, just because I think it would work best. I'm not sure if that's actually how mushrooms are or not, but basically a dark brown, a mid-tone, and then a highlight. But right now I'm just doing the dark tone. Now, the one thing I am doing a little bit different, instead of doing an overbrush, I'm stippling on the mid-tone here. This will give me a little bit of texture to the paint job, just to make it look a little, I don't know, sandy or rough, but I don't know if that's well, actually I do know. It's not how mushrooms actually look, but hey, this is fantasy and imagination, so you can do whatever you want. Now that I got all the stems done, I want to do a quick light dry brush on them, and just to make that texture painting I did pop a little more, and also with a few edges that are left. Now, my original intentions with this part of the mushrooms, or the elevated bases, was to have it stone cliff-like almost. So I'm going with a dark gray here. Again, I do the dark medium light, and this is my dark, or my base color. I decided I wanted to go for a more earthy tone, or basically dirt, for the elevated bases. So I'm giving the rock areas dark brown wash to just dirty it up somewhat. In the end, though, this step here can be absolutely skipped. This was something I did that was absolutely unnecessary. Now, as usual, when I'm doing an area like this, I wanted to have a little bit of difference in color, so I'm stippling on multiple colors on these areas, or dark orange, brown, yellows, just different, more natural earth tone colors. And here I'm just using a medium gray and giving the stone area an overbrush quick, just to lighten it up and also tone down all the colors that I just stippled on. And I'm doing the dark brown base color on all the dirt areas. If you can see, I did the highlight light dry brush with a light gray on all the stone areas, but I honestly forgot to film it. But as of right now, this is just a base coat on all the dirt areas. And now that the base coat for the dirt areas is dry, I'm just going over it with an overbrush of a medium brown. Pretty quick and simple, easy, three tones. And now that the overbrush is done, I'm going to do a highlight dry brush on all the dirt areas with a light brown. Again, it's a pretty simple step, so not just a quick light dry brush. I may have went a little heavy, but no big deal. And here I'm going to be painting the stems real quick with the highlight color of the larger stems. These are the stems of the mini mushrooms. And I'm also going to be painting the undersides of the shelf fungus thingamabobs the same color as well. Now I'm painting the tops of the shelf fungus mushrooms I decided to go with an orange. I'm just going with a straight up orange because with no real highlighting or anything, because I know I'm going to be doing some other steps that'll improve that later. Now, for some reason, this paint was a little bit on the thin side. I'm not sure why, but I wound up giving it 2 coats of this orange. I think it was a ripe tomato. I didn't want these to be straight up orange, so I'm putting a bunch of black dots on it, and I'll be doing something else next step. But just to break up that solid piece of orange. Now that the black is done, I'm actually getting a light tan, or almost white, and putting a small dot inside of the black dots, just for some variation, just to make it look pretty.
Everything is just so crisp, so detailed. It's really impressive stuff. So let's take a look at these bodies here in particular, because this interested me in particular, in addition to the head options, which we'll get to in just a moment. But straight away, what's cool about this, again, I don't know how historically accurate this is. I feel that Victrix does a very loving and attentive job in the research that they do on their various kits, so I have to believe that this is fairly historically accurate, right? But like, again, sculpted cures here over chainmail is just really cool. Whether or not it really happened, and again, I'm believing that it did because Victrix put it here. It's just very cool to see. And there's a couple other points, like, sculpted greaves down here on this body over here. And let's get this one here.
And here I'm going along and painting the caps of all the mini mushrooms with a ivory color. They're not going to stay that color, but I just wanted to hit them right now. And I'm also going to be painting, here I'm painting all the like bump pieces that I put on the larger caps the same color, just to break up that solid blue, red, and purple that I have. Now that I've got most of the painting done on the base, the elevated bases and whatnot, I'm going to go ahead and start painting the roots. I'm going to use the same 3 colors that I used on the stems. The reason I waited this long to do it, because I knew with all the other painting going on, I was going to be hitting the roots no matter how careful I was, and I would have to go back and fix it anyway. So I just waited till now and just did the whole thing. And here I'm just stippling on the mid-tone color, the same as I did with the stem, or the stems for the big mushrooms, to give it the same texture as the stems. And let's be honest, unless you put texture paste on hot glue, it's very smooth. So this will just give it some even more variation and texture. And now all the roots are getting the same exact highlight dry brush that all the stems did. Just real quick, light and easy, just to make them pop a little bit more, or even more so. I'm going to be using multiple different colors of contrast paint and painting all the mini mushroom caps just to give them color so they're not the ivory color straight out up. I want more variation to, and just a little more eye candy. So I'm using purples, blues, reds, greens, a couple different colors. Now that everything is pretty much painted, it's time to give this a wash of a homemade dark brown wash that I use just to dingy it up and give it some shadows and whatnot. The whole thing is getting painted with the wash. Just everything from top to bottom. And just dingy, making this look gross. Now I'm going to go back and since the wash is dry, I'm going to give everything a quick highlight dry brush just to bring up all the textures and stuff again, and still leave a bunch of that grime and grunge from the dark brown wash. I'll go, I'll start with the red caps and go the blue, purple, but I'm using the last highlight color I used prior to giving it a wash. Now I'm going to give the stems a highlight dry brush. I'm not going to do the highlight dry brush to the underside of the caps, just because I looked at it and I was like, yeah, let's just leave it all dingy and nasty looking underneath there. I mean, honestly, it's not a part that's going to be seen much, but I just kind of wanted to leave it dirtier than the rest of the piece. And then also at this point, I decided, you know what? I don't want this to look like they're sitting on giant cliffs. I wanted a more dirt look to it, so I used the highlight color for the stems and the roots on all the raised edges because I thought it looked good. Now I want to actually start adding some green grass to this, but I'm actually using I think it's Army Painter swamp grass flocking. I'm not sure of the manufacturer, but what I'm doing is I'm using some watered down PVA, painting it on any of the flat areas, even on the raised bases there, and just coating it with the flocking. Now I'm going to start adding various colors of grass tufts. Some of these were round, so I cut them in half so I can put them like straight up against the elevated parts or right up against the mushroom stems. But I'm using multiple colors and from multiple manufacturers. The ones I'm putting on right now, I'm not exactly sure of the color, but it was from Team U actually. Now, this Huge Miniatures here has become one of my favorite manufacturers of tufts and flowers and whatnot. So I want to I actually add some even more color to the bases here by just placing these flower tufts in random places. All the colors I'm using. I think one's teal, one's spring mix, and one's magenta. It seemed like cool colors, so I was like, yeah, let's add those. But again, I'm just placing them in random spots or anywhere that I think it would look good. And of course, I'm going to use some homemade pigment powder, which is basically soft pastel chalk scraped into a dust. And then just put it anywhere where I think you could use an extra shadow or look kind of dirty and dingy. And once I got that all on, I'm going to mist it with some isopropyl alcohol, and that'll help set it in place, and it won't rub off as easy. And here they all look nice and pretty. I made way more than I originally planned on, but why not? I think I made enough to make maybe like a 4x4 table could have a little bit of a mushroom forest. And these cats are actually large enough that you could place a mini on top of them without much of a problem. But overall, I'm actually really happy with how they turned out. And using bright colors is not my normal thing, but every once in a while you gotta do something different just so you don't wind up getting yourself in a rut. And again, I'm really happy with how these all turned out.
Hey everybody, if you made it this far, it means you watched it, and as always, I really appreciate it. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more, click subscribe. If you want to get a hold of me directly, there's a link down in the description to my Discord. If you guys make mushrooms, I would love to see what you guys make. I really would. Like I said, this is a classical style, semi-classical style of mushrooms that I did the way I want to do it. A little dingy, dark, but for me, this was actually a little bit on the bright side. But guys, go ahead, give it a whirl. They're a little time consuming, but not difficult. So go ahead and try and make some, guys. I would love to see what you guys do. But as always, guys, remember when you're making your terrain, the only person you got to worry about is you, because it's your terrain.